All right, everyone, instead of leading off today with the Democratic debate, which of course happened last night, because I'm on Eurotime, so I haven't seen it yet. Although from the highlights I can see it's basically like number 3. Biden incoherent, Elizabeth Warren gets protected directly by CNN. They cut off Tulsi Gabbard at one point because she started in on her, which is exactly what I figured would happen if Gabbard was allowed to debate at all. Most people were irrelevant. Yang was irrelevant. Klobuchar was irrelevant. Steyer, nobody knows he exists. And that's really how it's going to remain. Kamala Harris gets fucked again, trying to go at Warren, actually, which is pretty funny. It was funny because Kamala Harris, they can't cut her off the same way they do Gabbard. Beforehand, they were calling her a Russian asset straight up on CNN, apparently, and this pissed off Tulsi Gabbard's 10 remaining fans. So it was really funny. But we got to talk about Lebronjames, China, globalism, censorship, because what I've pointed out is the inherent nature of a globalized world, where companies in one country are doing a lot of business in another. In a country like the U.S., we have the First Amendment here. The government largely can't do anything about what people say, how they express themselves in any medium. It's illegal for it to do so. What's happened, though, is that private corporations, so-called, have been increasingly leaned on to do it instead. This is, by the way, not just happening with China. When people express outrage that the NBA or Blizzard would muzzle somebody for criticizing Xi and calling him Winnie the Pooh, and express no outrage that a U.S. firm co-opted by U.S. government figures would do fundamentally the same thing, I find that hypocritical. I'm going to call out both. I've noticed a lot of the same people that were a private corporation before all of a sudden aren't. But Lebronjames has uniquely managed to get seemingly everybody on the same page with regards to the issue of China promoting censorship, because his defense of China against the Hong Kong thing, I guess, I can't remember his name, Morsi or Moral or something like that, came out, one of these team managers, to criticize China and say basically free Hong Kong, and got fucked by the NBA. He's coming out now saying, well, people's wealth could have been endangered, their lives could have been endangered. People are pointing out how funny it is to talk about such things when there are people being gang raped and shot at right now over in Hong Kong fighting for freedom. I find it, by the way, very funny. A few very bitter individuals who won't be named, who otherwise I largely agree with as far as political commentary goes, actually siding with China in a non-ironic sense because of liberalism. It's extremely funny to watch. Like, the idea is that somehow Chinese communism is superior to any other system. There's no other system in the world that communism doesn't fall short of. The U.S. is barely quasi-capitalistic anymore. We've got the Democrats running on an openly socialist platform. Even that is sane compared to what China does. China takes the worst aspects of exploitation and mind-numbing censorship from communism and combines them with the most grisly aspects of corporate cronyism and turns them into a monster that even Karl Marx would shudder at. That's what China is. I support Hong Kong. Yeah, it'd be wonderful if there were actually a functioning democratic republic there. Not that it's going to happen. You know, China, at that point, if a true revolution happened in Hong Kong, China would go in with the troops and just wipe everyone out. And then they would say, what are you going to do about it, rest of the world? You know, you buy our cheap shit. The problem is the U.S. corporations do business with China so heavily, they import a lot of stuff, that China gets leverage. And this is innate. This happens between firms within countries, too. Two firms are doing business. Big-time partnership. Let's say that you've got a paving company, a big paving company in a big city. All the paving that's done in the whole state is done by this one firm. And they have a supplier of the raw materials they need to pave things. Let's say that the owner has some political belief or says something that offends the sensibilities of the leader of that other company. They may lean on them and say, look, I take great offense to what you're saying. Perhaps you should rethink that because there's this other business over here that would love to buy our gravel or would like to buy our La Brea tar pit drippings. And what ends up happening is, more often than not, because of money, not because of politics, it's not because of some deep-seated hatred of liberty that these companies are acting the way that they are. It's just cold, hard cash. That's why Apple shut up. That's why LeBron just, as people are saying, shut up and dribble to him. That's why Blizzard decided to ban somebody for spurious reasons, take their winnings away, then half-heartedly give them back, only to sink themselves deeper into the fucking issue. These companies are motivated by the dollar. They're motivated by wealth. Wealth creates power. There's an interplay there. I suppose you could tie that in with politics in a roundabout way, but for the most part, it's just about wealth. It's about growth, and it is capitalistic after a fashion. The problem is what you've got is a situation where actual capitalism has become a cronyist system, like in the United States. When people say, well, it's a private company, they can do what they want, what they're doing is ignoring one very fundamental thing. Silicon Valley gets tax subsidies, they get favorable treatment by state and federal government, they platform people within the government that are taxpayer funded. They are not fully private entities. At the very least, some stringencies under the First and Fourth Amendment should legitimately apply to them. With these other companies, they're working with a foreign government. Now, our founders, I don't think, ever envisioned a situation in which U.S. firms would grow large and monopolistic enough, like they didn't really have the concept unless it was granted by the crown back then. They never really, I'm assuming, had the concept of China becoming a major world player, communism existing, and then causing Chinese communists to try to influence U.S. businesses and thus U.S. policy. I have a feeling that they would have probably included something in the Constitution. This is purely speculative, of course. I can't prove this. I have a feeling that because the Enlightenment goal was liberty in the very enlightened academic philosophical sense, beyond just the legalism of the Constitution, there was an underlying basis for it existing in the first place. I have a feeling that they would have put in something in there to prevent U.S. private firms from cooperating with foreign governments. If the government here can't compel a firm to censor people, like let's say that John Kasich says, well, if they want to continue operating in Ohio, they have to ban this user because I find them offensive. That wouldn't fly. Obviously, the company itself banning the user doesn't violate the Constitution. The government influencing that to happen, of course, would. It's very funny because right now, literally up on the debate stage last night, you got a question with regards to Kamala Harris saying that Trump's Twitter should be deleted, which of course is ludicrous. Even Warren pointed that out. Look, you can't do that. You don't know what you're talking about. Shut up. But then you have a foreign country that's not even constrained by the Constitution, isn't even a representative democracy, certainly not an ally of the United States, is effectively micromanaging the political views of certain businesses here. I think it's problematic. Lebronjames tweeting about it shows how problematic it is, but ultimately, at the end of the day, he doesn't really care about China. If you think he's like some communist agent, no, of course not. He just wants money. He sells Nike. He sells shoes that arguably Nike shoes are responsible for all sorts of deaths. People stab each other all the time over their kickers. So you've got a weird situation here where the structure of the world economy is fundamentally suppressing liberty. We obviously need to do something about it. It's the same as with the internet. The internet that's promoting the free flow of information, human communication at every level, and has innovated basically every part of our way of life over the last 20 years till some things are totally unrecognizable from how they were when I was a kid. That's not that long a period of time in the span of human history, let's face it. The same internet that's used to promulgate information is now being used as well because of the growth of monopolies on these various social media platforms to suppress information. I think that should not be happening as well. Again, purely philosophical. I can't prove going back in time that the founders looking at the internet today would say, yes, speech should be more protected there because privatization will become a problem within human communication. I also can't prove that the founders would want AR-15s being sold, but I have a hunch. I have a general feeling probably they would, and probably they would get drunk and wander around out in the woods with their tanks and shoot at deer and blow them up. I think that they would find free speech wonderful, and I think they would find the idea of some foreign government influencing our own policy through these private businesses, which donate, by the way, to political campaigns and hold court explicitly and directly with politicians here, like Zuckerberg sitting down with Tucker Carlson and talking the meat and bones of U.S. politics. I see a conflict of interest there, a significant one that needs to be addressed. Globalism is dangerous. We need to constrain aspects of it where it exists at all. Of course, it doesn't need to. Global trade is wonderful in the free market sense. What we've instead got are a bunch of deeply authoritarian centralized states constantly issuing tariffs, constantly banning and regulating imports and exports, constantly micromanaging everything. The free market didn't cause any of these problems. Its absence did. That's about all. Peace out.